folks. This is Radia here with Spirit Moves Radio. And here today we're going to explore some of the things we've gone through this last week, and in relationship to the Hammadi scriptures, the paintings at the Sistine Chapel of the Temptation of Eve and the creation of Adam. And it's funny how things just appear out of nowhere when you happen to be looking for something else. But this came to light, and I thought this was of importance. And in general, I find that medieval art carries so many messages and codes. It's difficult to really understand them unless you've gone through many years of esoteric teachings and mysticism, which fortunately I have some, but as always, we're still learning. Okay, so the first thing I want to bring up is last night I was listening to a man called Jovan Hutton Pulitzer there. He has a radio show called The History Heretic. And in last night's episode, he was pointing out some of the codes that were present in a painting in particular called The Temptation of Eve. So I was looking at his painting that he was pointing out and some of the features of that painting. And then I went to the Sistine Chapel, the virtual tour, and looked at the same painting on the ceiling. It's difficult to see, it's upside down and whatnot. But after some careful deliberation and looking at it, I found that, yes, there's some definite differences. He says, Jovan says that painting, the one he has, is from a painting of Leonardo da Vinci, which I could not find anywhere online. And the one painted by Michelangelo at the Sistine Chapel. One of the most obvious differences is the phallic symbol, which is the stump coming up of the ground between the grape tree and Eve and Adam. In the painting of Da Vinci, the phallic symbol is clearly a phallic symbol, and it is erect. Whereas the painting at the Sistine Chapel of that same stump is clearly sagging. And I believe this is an indication that Michelangelo was saying the power of the church is sagging and no longer what it once was. One of the other things I noticed is the mottling of the features itself. In the Sistine Chapel, you see that all the people portrayed in the painting, they all have this mottled kind of skin. The only being in the painting that does not have a mottled skin is the angel that's driving Adam and Eve out. I find this of particular importance. And also I noticed that the hair of Adam on the Eden side is much blonder than the hair of the Adam on the passing of the terrestrial paradise side. So those kinds of things tend to matter. And also I noticed that Eve's face is different. On the Eden side, her face looks quite feminine, whereas when they get thrown out of the terrestrial paradise, her face looks decidedly male. So, and to this, I'm just going to add some of the actual scriptures, which I thought was important and pertinent to this. And first I'm going to read from the Secret Book of John, Berlin Gnostic Codex 8502 in 1896, and the Sethian Treatise. This is on page, I have page 113 to 115. That's after the resurrection. So here we have the fall of Sophia, wisdom of insight, who constitutes an aeon, conceived a thought with the conception of the invisible spirit and foreknowledge. She wanted to bring forth something like herself without consent of spirit. And really the male had to give approval? That's unusual. She comes from the fourth luminaries, which derive from divine self-generated three beings, will, thought, and life, and the four powers of understanding, grace, perception, and thoughtfulness. Number 1, grace dwells in the eternal realm of Harmozel, the first angel, with the three angels. Within this eternal realm is grace, truth, and form. And 2, Auroriel, the three aeons of insight, perception, and memory. And the third, Devethai, three aeons of understanding, love, and idea. And the fourth, which is Aleth, which is the three aeons of perfection, peace, and Sophia. On 110, page 110, Barbilo appears. The Father is the one who beholds himself in the light surrounding him, which is the spring of living water and provides all realms. He reflects on his image everywhere, sees it in the spring of the Spirit, and becomes enamored of his luminous water, for his image is in it. The spring of pure luminous water surrounding him. His thought became a reality, and she who appeared in his presence in shining light came forward. She is the first power who preceded everything and came forth from his mind as the forethought of the all. Her light shines like the Father's light. She is the perfected power, is the image of the perfect and invisible Virgin Spirit. She, the first power, the glory of Barbilo, the perfect glory among the aeons, the glory of revelation, she glorified and praised the Virgin Spirit, for because of the Spirit she had come forth. Now recognize all of this, what it's talking about, happened long before Adam and Eve. But we want to set the record straight here. And some of the things I just said in that passage come to compare with my work of the Legend of Pistis Sophia. In particular, the talking about he becomes enamored of his luminous water, for his image is in it, and that reflection is God of reflection, which is mentioned. His thought became a reality, and in mine, his feelings became reality. So I think we're on the same page here when we say that some of these messages continue to be coming out in those of us who have our minds open to them. I'm going to skip some other stuff here and move to Barbilo asked the invisible spirit to give her foreknowledge, and the spirit consented. When the spirit consented, foreknowledge appeared and stood by forethought. This is the one who came from the thought of the invisible Virgin Spirit. So forethought came from the thought of the invisible Virgin Spirit, which had to have existed before him or it. Foreknowledge glorified the Spirit and the Spirit's perfect power, Barbilo, for because of her, foreknowledge had come into being. She asked again to be given incorruptibility, and Spirit consented. Barbilo asked to be given life, eternal, and the invisible Spirit consented, and life eternal appeared, and they stood together and glorified the invisible Spirit, and Barbilo, because of her, they had come into being. She asked again to be given truth, and the invisible Spirit consented. Truth appeared, and together they glorified the good invisible Spirit and its Barbilo. Because of her, they had come into being. So then Barbilo conceives. The Father gazed into Barbilo with the pure light surrounding the invisible Spirit and his radiance. Barbilo conceived from him, and she produced a spark of light similar to the blessed light, but not as great. This was the only child of the Mother-Father that had come forth, the only offspring, the only child of the Father, the pure light. The invisible Virgin Spirit rejoiced over the light that was produced, that came forth from the first power of the Spirit's forethought, who is Barbilo. the Spirit anointed it with his own goodness until it was perfect. Hence it was anointed, since it was anointed with goodness of the invisible Spirit. So this is clearly saying that the first offspring conceived of came together because of the mother and father coming together, which was, of course, rejected by the Catholic Church. The child stood in the presence of the Spirit and was anointed and glorified Holy Spirit and forethought because of her it had come forth. And it goes on to say the different things that the child asked for. We don't have a lot of time, so we're not going to talk too much about it. But now we have to get into the deeper parts of it. And this is something I thought was incredibly important. From the light of the Anointed One comes the 4 luminaries, and these stand before the Divine Self-generated, and these are the 12 aeons before the child of the Great One, the Self-generated. Now Sophia who did not have a partner, gave birth without consent, with conception of the invisible Spirit and foreknowledge. And because of the invincible power within her, her thought was not idle, and a perfect being came out and did not resemble its mother. And this is we're talking about Yaldabaoth, but that is not the point that I am trying to make here. Okay. Here we are. Now we come from parts about Adam and Eve. Adam came. This is 71.16 and 21 from we have the right page. The Gospel of Thomas. Adam and Eve came from 2 twins, the Spirit and the virgin earth. Christ was born of a virgin to correct the fall that occurred in the beginning. There are 2 trees in paradise. One produces animals, and the other produces people. Adam ate of the tree that produces animals, and he became an animal and brought forth animals. As a result, Adam's children worship animals. The tree whose fruit he ate is the tree of knowledge, and because of this, sins increased. If he had eaten of the tree of life, which produces people, gods would worship people that create God, and so also in this world, people make gods. There's so much that I would like to talk more about, but there's just simply not time. Okay. This is what we're seeing in the painting. All this happened in accordance with Pistis' foreknowledge, so humanity would be made in this likeness and condemn the authorities because of their mottled bodies. Sophia Zoe, who was Sabaoth, anticipated them and laughed, for they did not know what they were doing. For she created her own human being first, so that he might be able to tell the mottled bodies out of the authorities and how to despise them and escape them. The birth of the instructor happened like this. When Sophia let a drop of light fall upon the water, there appeared an androgynous human. Then she took it into a female. Then she took the body and gave it the shape of the mother, a hermaphrodite. The Hebrews called this child's mother Eve of life, which later the Archon's authorities called the beast, so that it might lead their mottled bodies astray. So this being became the instructor, the wisest of all creatures. The Song of Eve, see the thunder of perfect mind. Sophia sent Zoe, called Eve, as an instructor to Adam, and she breathed into him, and by the word of Eve, Adam stood up from the ground, so the children would be vessels of light. So there you have it, folks. In the painting of the temptation of Eve, we see that it is, in fact, Sophia, who has come as an androgynous human through her efforts of Barbilo. And in the treatise of Seth, there's one last thing that has to be said here. Where is it? Treatise of Seth. It goes on and on and on. Oh, right, here we are.